Yes, but that's the portion of the video that doesn't show much of anything.
Depending on how you look at it. So,
The lack of something being there is important to the defense.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just note that it's actually quite a bit before this incident, so it doesn't have, it's not as if it runs all the way up until 2021, because the testimony has been, there's an earlier segment, some 25 minutes before this incident, that is a short clip that doesn't show anything.
Anyway, my understanding is that the defense doesn't really have an objection to substituting this new two-page exhibit for the one-page 33, because it began at the exact same, both began at the exact same time. And you think it should begin at an earlier time, but that's not the video that Mr. Frederick was involved with, right? So
What was the last, I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
his compilation video does not include the one that was 10 minutes earlier or whatever. So this reflects the timeline of his video.
Yes, that reflects his timeline, omitting the earlier video,
All right, so
which he's acknowledged.
do you want us to retain the old 33? Call this 33A or something?
Not necessarily.
So you don't mind me replacing 33 with 33?
I do, Judge. I would just like to make it 33A, just so we have both, because I'm comparing them right now.
Then that's what we'll do. I just want to make sure what the issue is. So Susan, make it 33A.
I don't have any objection otherwise.
Okay.
So it's my county phone. Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to be 33A. Are we otherwise ready for the jury?
Yes, state's ready.
Mr. Hester?
Let me take this up now, or we could. One little insight on scheduling. I know Ms. Eakes told the court a couple of times she believed they'd be done before November. If that's the case, then we met on Thursday to work on scheduling, and I guess want to confirm that's still the case, and if not, when the state thinks they'll be completed, and follow up with the court. We earlier talked about presenting our defenses not in alphabetical order as we are now, and I think the court said, I don't really care much about that, but we want to confirm that we don't run afoul of the court's expectations.
We're not going to finish by the beginning of November. We've gone much slower, obviously, than the state had anticipated. So while I was optimistic, we're still, I mean, I think at this point, given the pace, I would expect hopefully we can finish by the third week in November.
Oh, that's a big difference. 3 weeks longer than you thought?
Well, last week, put on 5 witnesses.
Right.
I don't, I hope the pace will pick up and that we could get it on sooner than that, but it's not looking that way right now.
All right. Well, I don't know if you're in alphabetical order just as a matter of happenstance. My reason for doing it is because that was numerically your reason in terms of how the cases were filed in that order. It also happens, I guess, that they're alphabetically that way too. Maybe that was the state's reason for filing them in the order they did. I don't know.
Well, I think for purposes of presentation of our case, we'd ask the court to allow us to choose which order to present. We have a joint defense, and so certain parties anticipate calling experts, and so if the court would allow us to choose which defendant to put on the case first, I think that would make it easier for us to present our cases as opposed to Burbank, then Collins, then Rankine.
Well, I just says, my view has been, you need to just make sure I understand what you're doing.
No, we met on Thursday and actually scripted out order and how we wanted to do it, but we wanted to get the court's permission before we contacted the witnesses and lined them up in that order.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's, sort of things are clear.
Yes, we'll be very clear with the court.
So if it's not a crazy request, that's fine with me.
We just don't want to go in the Burbank calling this ranking order.
Well, if you guys have a list, you're going to give it to me?
We can't, we just want to, we have to confirm who the state's actually going to call. And once we know who they're not calling, we'll supplement that with the witnesses we want to call that have not been called by the state. But I can tell you, well, later once I confirm.
You can tell me, but you won't tell me.
We have a plan, we actually have a plan, Judge, and so we just want to make
Okay.
sure that we understand the court's expectations, and then we'll get you what we want to do and before we do anything, make sure it complies with your expectations
Right.
and what you want.
Because I may need to make a couple of
Yes.
modifications to it.
Understood.
Oh, by the way, there was an issue about there was still an expert about an epidemiologist. I can't remember the name of the gentleman.
Dr. Freeman?
Dr. Freeman? There we go. Are you still intending to call Dr. Freeman?
Yes, we are.
And I think I indicated to you that I wanted to have at least some kind of hearing outside the presence of the jury before he testifies with respect to his expertise and so on.
Understood.
Because I had some doubts about I don't know, about the methodology.
Understood.
Okay. When do you expect Dr. Freeman may be called?
Not in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, we otherwise ready for the jury now? Great, let's have the jury, Mrs. Winnie. Welcome back, Ms. Frederick.
Thank you.
Yeah, whoever you're comfortable.
Oh, crap. Your Honor, I'm sorry. It's decided to do an update.
It's deciding to do what?
It's deciding to do an update.
Oh,
What you-
well, let's hope it's fast. Could be.
How long does that usually take, Fran?
If I crash out of it, who knows? I've never seen this before. I'll know in a minute. Apologies.
No problem. Things happen.
Well, I heard the fan. I thought it was your machine. Thank you.
Glad it worked out.
I have 2 more, so we're ready for the jury.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wasn't connected to the internet and it decided to
We're still done.
do an update.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I have a meeting at noon, so I can't go beyond 12. Executive committee.
So we're not in the afternoon session now?
No.
Oh,
I just mean I can't go, at noon, at the stroke of noon, I'm gonna stop this thing. I'm not gonna go to like 12:10 or something. Hard stop at 12. I'll be back by before
We have
1:30.
hard stop at 2:15. 2:30. Okay.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, Ms. Nicolova, whenever you're ready, please resume.
Thank you. Mr. Fredericks, before we return to Exhibit 441, I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions. You previously testified about an EBT transaction that occurred at the 7-Eleven at 23:11 hours. And did you have that documented in the Exhibit 11, which was part of your report?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the card number for the transaction that took place at that time?
I'd have to review the report, the exhibit. Thank you.
I actually think this is testified to last week, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Card number was testified to last week by Mr. Wilkins.
Right, that's why I'm wondering why you're asking about it again.
I want to make sure it's consistent with the document that he received for the time.
Ah, okay. Proceed.
Thank you.
Objection overruled.
The document number in the Exhibit 11 that I received or the EBT file number is 5077-1070633-70803.
I'm sorry. You slowed down. 5077.
I'll read it again. This is the card number. 5077-1070633-70803.
And Mr. Fredericks, when we were wrapping up your testimony on Thursday, defense counsel for Mr. Collins went to voir dire you for clarification regarding your testimony on Collins holding Mr. Ellis. Did you have an opportunity to review your transcripts from your testimony that day?
I did.
And did you ever testify that Mr. Collins was holding Mr. Ellis?
No.
What did you testify to?
I testified that Mr. Burbank's left arm was around Mr. Ellis's leg, and that was visible between where the position of Mr. Collins was and Mr. Burbank was. And I said that Mr. Ellis's leg was lifted just above the height of where we can see Mr. Collins' knee or thigh area.
Your Honor, can we go to publish 441 again, please?
Proceed.
And I'm going to ask you to go through what you just explained to the jury as far as Defendant Collins' knee and Defendant Burbank's, Defendant Collins' knee and Mr. Ellis's foot, and the location of that in relation to Defendant Collins' knee.
Yes, where we left off with was at slide 12 on Friday. And I was describing Mr. Burbank's left arm around Mr. Ellis's leg, and Mr. Ellis's foot was just above the position where we can see Mr. Collins' knee thigh area.
And are you able to determine or track where Mr. Ellis's other foot is in slide 12?
Yes, it is behind Mr. Burbank's left leg, and then becomes visible as it comes down to the ground, making contact with the ground at about slide 16.
And are you able to, in tracking Mr. Ellis's feet, are you able to make any determination on whether or not his body was elevated?
If we proceed from 16, we can see that that Mr. Ellis's legs, if we go before that, we can see that from slide 9 through to 16, he was off the ground. And then as we proceed from 24, he goes down and backwards onto the ground.
And in slide 24, when he goes down and backwards onto the ground, are you able to track at all what body part is of Mr. Ellis is down on the ground?
If we proceed to slide 35, we can see that this is the, although the color is a little bit different, it's because of the motion blur. We can see everything's in blur, and as we progress from this point where we see Mr. Ellis's left hip area and the colors come back in, we see this is his pants here. So he is on the ground, rolling over onto his right side.
And you said there's motion blur. Can you remind the jury what motion blur indicates?
When an object or individual in this case is moving quickly compared to the sampling of the image, how the image is created, it's grabbing light. If the object is moving fast while the camera is creating an image, then the object will be blurred because it's in multiple positions. And that kind of gives us an indication of speed.
And are you able to track Defendant Burbank at the time in which Mr. Ellis was going down to the ground?
Yes, again, in order to do that, I had to go backwards. And we can see that, as I described, Mr. Burbank's left arm around Mr. Ellis's leg. Mr. Ellis's knee is up about the level of Mr. Burbank's back area. And then as Mr. Ellis goes down to the ground, I can see a blurred motion, and this is Mr. Burbank's right arm moving up and over his head. And then as we go down, as they go down, Mr. Burbank kind of goes down in a similar position. And because we're looking at an image that is two-dimensional, it doesn't give us that third dimension for depth. The video can't tell us whether they're in the same position or where they are in relation to each other once we have a lot of blur and they go down. So there's a limitation to what the video can show at that moment. As we move forward, we can see that Mr. Burbank is on his feet and he's moving backwards. And we can see Mr. Ellis's leg at slide 53 is bent slightly at the knee, and we can see that his feet are not in motion at this point, and they stay in this position for a few frames, so for a short period of time, and they're not in motion. And Mr. Burbank is moving backwards, and we can see by his feet, he pauses for a moment at the edge of the vehicle, and then as I advance forward, then we can just see his hand and shadow of his feet leave the view of the camera at slide 72.
And that's based on tracking the shadow and just his hand for that, to be able to determine that he's still standing.
Yes, and we can see the hand and it leaves at 72, and we can see the shadow that goes away at about slide 75. It's gone.
And when you go back before Defendant Burbank is out of the screen, are you able to make a determination on tracking him in comparison to Mr. Ellis's feet at about 50, 52? If there's any contact, can you make any determination of a movement at that time?
No, again, this is the limitation of the video. Because it's two-dimensional, again, we don't have in this particular image the ability to see if they're in the same, what's called the z-axis, so the same distance, the same position. We can see that there's a similar xy coordinate, but not, that they're in the same position. What we can assist with is that the motion blur of his foot, Mr. Ellis's foot, goes away, which means that it's not in motion and that his foot stays in the same position for a few frames, and his knees remain bent for those few frames as Mr. Burbank continues moving backward.
And in those few frames in which Defendant Burbank is moving backward and Mr. Ellis's feet remain fixed, is about how much time passes in that?
About a quarter of a second.
And if you progress through to slide 67, are you able to track Mr. Ellis's knees at all to determine if they extend all the way out?
No, as I described, his knees remain bent, so they do not extend outward. As he turns and his feet, once he turns perpendicular to the camera, his feet have remained in the same position. They don't extend to the left, screen left. They remain in that position for about a quarter of a second. So they're sustained in that position.
And I want to come back to tracking Defendant Collins, but before we do that, you testified about Defendant Burbank going off screen, and he was standing when he went off screen. When he comes back into the screen of the camera, how much time passes?
Well, firstly, to be more specific, his head is visible at slide 57 as he moves back, and that helps me determine how long he's out of frame. His head stays in the same position as he moves back. We can see his waist because he's illuminated slightly by the headlights of the police vehicle. And that assists us in seeing the reflection of his hand or object in his hand. Something's reflective there at his hand area. And then he moves off, and from slide 75, which is the last visual indication that he's in that position, it's at 23, 21, 51.833. So if I advance forward, to slide 98, we begin to see the shadow of his foot come in, and that's at 52.6, which is 700 milliseconds later, which means just under 3/4 of a second he's been out of the view of the camera.
And when he comes back into the view of the camera, are you able to make a determination if he's still standing?
Yes, his head is in the same position it was as it left 3/4 of a second earlier. It's in the same position as he comes back in.
And before we proceed from slide 106, can you please take us back to when Defendant Burbank is out of frame and track Defendant Collins in relation to Mr. Ellis?
Yes. Again, the tracking is assisted by looking at reflection, and I can see at slide 56 the shoulder flash on his right arm of his uniform, and that is visible for many of the images. Sometimes it goes away because he turns slightly and then the reflection goes away, and then he turns back, the reflection comes back, and it helps a little bit to give a sense of the orientation. So if I forward through the series of slides, we can see his tunic, the reflection of his tunic goes away for a moment, partly because of motion blur. So it's, again, the speed that he's moving. It's in blur, so it doesn't reflect. And then when he slows his movement down, we can see it more clearly at slide 84, as an example. And then there's some motion as the tunic moves forward. And at that point at 91, we can see his right arm move forward to just off the roadway.
Is that down to the ground just off the roadway?
Yes.
Is that somewhat obscured by or you're able to track it, but somewhat obscured by the reflection?
Well, I had to look at it a number of times, to determine what reliably we can say about the movement, given the limitations of motion blur and the video itself. But the arm is definitely visible. It's in motion until we get into an area where the darkness of the garbage can and the darkness of the uniform basically blend in and becomes one.
Once the darkness of the trash can and the darkness of the uniform no longer blend in, are you able to track Defendant Collins' arm and hand in relation to Mr. Ellis?
Yes. So at slide 100, we can see that Mr. Collins has moved back a little bit, providing some spacing between the background and his dark uniform, which then highlights silhouettes, in essence, the image of his arm. And then the arm comes off, begins to come up and separate from the ground at slide 105. And as it comes up, the shoulder flash becomes obscured because the arm is in the way of the shoulder flash in the camera. And then we can see the arm then move downward at between slide 105 goes up, and then downward up until slide 116. And then again the shoulder flash comes up and the arm comes up, goes down again at 130. The shoulder flash at 135 comes up, and the arm is up, and the arm comes down again at slide 147. And then at 53, there's too much blur to make any determination from the video alone, but there is audio that coincides with those motions that provides a bit more information. But from the video alone, because the camera is moving, everything becomes blurred, and there's nothing visually that can be said.
And we'll go through the audio with that in a few moments. But while you're tracking Defendant Collins' arm coming up and going down 4 times, is there, where is that in relation to where Mr. Ellis remains after he's gone down on the ground?
At slide 28, I'm pointing to an area that is below the yellow arrow and just above the white cross marked line, and I'm pointing to the position of Mr. Ellis's face. It's visible in a number of images as we progress through that position. And the downward motions of Mr. Collins' arm extends to that XY coordinate, so to that position. The video can't say if there's any contact at that point. It can't say where in a Z-axis it is, just the hand is coming down in the XY coordinate of the same position.
So the XY coordinate of the same position of where Mr. Ellis's head is located.
In a two-dimensional world, correct, yeah.
And you testified earlier that the audio assist, when you watch the video, and obviously when you do a PDF, you can't have audio on it. And what audio coordinates with the same time as the PDF of those motions?
Well, this audio is from Ms. McDowell's camera, and it's part of the other exhibit.
And let's go to, we'll come back to this moment, but let's go to exhibit 20, her camera. No permission to publish, Your Honor, it's already been admitted.
One second, please. Thank you.
And could you take us through exhibit 20 on where the timing of the defendant Collins' hand coming down in the same XY coordinate as Mr. Ellis's head?
It's about 3.5 seconds into exhibit 20, and I can play it from here.
Please.
Hey! Stop! Oh my God!
So that was from her video. Then the Vivint video at that time has more of the audio from the street.
And the beginning of this video on exhibit 20 is what you have in the first 6 seconds of the PDF that we've been going through for 441, correct?
Correct, and that was just 3 of those 6 seconds that I just played.
And then you did a sync timeline, and you did that in exhibit 443.
Yes.
And 443, when you were here actually, when you testified a couple weeks ago, you had played 546, which did not include Ms. McDowell's video in it. It was only Vivint and Mr. Cowden's. And 443 actually contains Ms. McDowell's videos in it also.
Yes.
Okay. And it's the sync timeline of the Vivint video, Cowden, McDowell, and the audio from multiple sources.
Yes.
And all of it you've already testified to as far as the authentication of the sources that you utilized.
Yes.
Okay. And that's about a 24-minute video.
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers in evidence 443.
Objection.
443 is admitted.
And Mr. Fredericks, I just want to go through the beginning of that with you on what we were just working through as far as the audio that you have from Vivint and Ms. McDowell's video that was done in the PDF. You can take us through the coordinating audio of that.
Okay. This is the beginning of that exhibit, and it starts, I'll just take it back to the very beginning.
You testified previously that the first 2 seconds of this are just a placeholder.
Yes, just to describe that this is the very beginning of the Vivint video where there's activity related to this event. And this starts at 23, 21, 41, and 300 milliseconds.
And if you can play from there for the including Miss McDowell's. And if you go back a bit, and can you pause where you first are able to determine based on going through the PDF, Defendant Collins' hand motion. I don't know if there's a way to zoom in on that with the sync.
Yes? So this is at 23, 21, 52.833. And I'll play it from here. This isn't the stabilized version, so it's the raw video included here. And I'll play it from that point.
Yes, please. And so that audio that you hear there is actually what's being picked up by the Vivint
Yes.
camera, which is over 100 feet away from...
Partly Vivint and partly McDowell, but most of that street noise is from the Vivint video.
And we'll come back to 443, and I apologize for going back and forth with the exhibits, but I do want to finish up with 441, which was the PDF. And in going through, we're at slide 151 now. Can you take us through Defendant Burbank coming back into the frame and any indication or anything that you can determine based on reflection in his hands?
Yes. Let's go backwards. So going back to slide 100, which is when his hand first becomes visible, although the shadow of his foot was visible immediately before that. There's a movement in front of his body that's reflected in the headlights, which allows some tracking. And then at slide 10, at 110, we can see his left hand move away from his right hand. So if I go backwards, they were at the same XY coordinate, and then his left hand moves away, and I'm tracking his right hand now at 414, and it's reflective, and what's reflecting is the taser.
And that's a taser both from seeing it in Miss McDowell's, but then you also synced it with Mr. Cowden's video to be able to track that and accurately track what was in his hand.
Yes, and we can see that at the same moment in time from Mr. Cowden's video.
And if you can take us through, I believe there's 172 or 174 frames on this.
Yes, just moving forward, it just tracks the position of Mr. Burbank that is also seen in the Cowden video as he moves to the far side from the McDowell perspective. So he's on the other side, and we know that because the bodies are between him and the camera.
And without the ability to do the tracking as you've done here and sync between the two videos, it'd be difficult to see.
Your Honor, I would object to this deleted from the
Sustained.
What difficulties would you have in being able to track the bodies of Defendant Burbank and Defendant Collins if just going through the video based on the coloring of their uniforms and the blur from being absorbed?
Yeah, so slide 148 is a good example. If I were just to be shown this slide and asked to identify how many people are here in the image and see what were the individuals doing before they got to this position, I wouldn't be able to. There's just not enough information here. So the tracking arrows is a methodology that's used by video analysts to assist lay people to track the movements. This takes quite a bit of time to do, and then once it's done, then it just assists a layperson to follow along and decide whether they agree with that or not.
Thank you. And if you can take us through to the end of the PDF, please.
So I can still see the individual bodies simply because I've been tracking them from the beginning. I can track the pixels that make up the overall features of the body and the shoulder flashes and that kind of thing. But once the camera gets too blurry and then moves off, can't track anything.
And that's why you also asked the street sign that you testified to last week. That was your base.
Yes, once I lost the street sign, I lost the ability to stabilize the image, and then I removed the tracking arrows.
And if you go back just a few frames, as far as Mr. Ellis's feet there, are you able to make any determination on tracking his feet and where they're located?
The shoes that are quite reflective assist in identifying the position of his feet. And I didn't need an arrow for that because I think it's readily apparent to a layperson where they are, so I didn't put the arrows on it.
Thank you. And I want to go back to, we'll go back to 443 if we could, please. And one of the things that the raw video, Ms. McDowell's raw video, did that have the time up on it like you've done in the sync?
No.
So you're able to track the timing with her raw video based on you synchronizing everything?
Yes, based on the metadata in her video and the validation of the timing from the various sources, yes.
And what I'd like you to do is bring us to the point of her second video, which is incorporates Exhibit 21. And you testified, it would have been over a week ago, when you were first here, about hands behind your back commands by officers. And I'd like you to bring us through the second video and walk us through the determination of where Mr. Ellis's hands were at the time of those commands.
Just give me a moment just to cue it up, please.
And just to, it's a bit of a blur on here. Can you identify the three sources of the video for the jury, please?
Yes, at 23:22:02.5, we have the Vivint video on the upper left, we have Cowden video at the center, and the McDowell video on the right-hand side. And I'll play it from here just to orient the beginning of the video. Just a moment, please.
Him! Just arrest him! Oh my god, that looks so I'm not picking it.
So that first segment ends, first video ends at 23:22:26.667. And I'm just going to refer to,
Exhibit 33.
is that in? Is that in?
You can use it to refresh your memory as far as the time is concerned.
Thank you. So this is the second McDowell video, and I'll play it from here.
Hands behind your back. Put your hands behind.
And are you able to zoom in at all on Ms. McDowell's video to locate at all Mr. Ellis's hand in relation to defendant Burbanks?
Yes. This is Mr. Burbank's hand on top of Mr. Ellis's hand, and that is at 23:22:47.667.
And where is Mr. Ellis's head at that point?
I'm pointing to Mr. Ellis's head here, just underneath Mr. Collins' left shoulder flash.
Could you play that through with the audio? Just a few seconds before that.
Do it again. Hands behind your back. Put your hands behind.
And I want to bring us to State's Exhibit 33A, which you referenced earlier as far as a timeline that was prepared. And does this timeline accurately reflect when the Vivint video starts, the available Vivint video starts and ends that you used in this sync timeline?
Yes.
And there's several different Vivint video segments that are included in here.
Yes.
And as we just saw on the portion of 443 that you played, even though there's things that are happening in the street, there are sections that we didn't have a Vivint video for that time period.
Correct. It was not recording during those times.
And then Ms. McDowell's video is also included for the two videos that she had, the 38-second and 14-second video.
Yes.
And then Mr. Cowden's video, 58 seconds, is also included.
Yes.
And Your Honor, the state offers into evidence 33A.
I'm going to catch him for illustrative purposes, but for substantive evidence.
Join.
All right. 33A is admitted.
Thank you.
Over objection.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Proceed.
And Mr. Fredericks, can you take us through the actual times and gaps for the Cowden, McDowell, and Vivint video that we have on the first page of 33A?
Yes. Your Honor, may I use your pointer, please?
Absolutely.
And may I approach the screen?
Sure.
I
Thank
think
you.
we actually got a different pointer as we had some concerns about the wood post.
Yeah, it's got a rubber
There's an
stop on it.
updated poster here, or
Yeah, thank you.
pointer. High tech.
So high tech, be anything
Go
long.
ahead. Thank you. This kind of helps. It helped me understand the relationship between.
Yes. Feel free to move around.
Thank you. This assisted me in understanding the relationship at the beginning of the videos. And so the first Vivint video that I used starts at 23:21:41. There was a video that was about 25 minutes earlier that didn't have any involvement in the incident. I looked at it, couldn't see any relationship to anything, so that's not included in my timeline. Then the McDowell video started about 8 seconds after the first Vivint video, and then it continued until 23, 22, 27, and shortly after the McDowell video started, approximately 10 seconds later, the Cowden video started up. And the Cowden video continued in the time period when McDowell ended her first recording and then started her second recording. We had the Cowden video covering that time period. And when the Vivint video ended, we still had both McDowell in here and Cowden in here. So that's why when I showed 443, it showed no Vivint video for 16 seconds. I think that was the heading. And that took us to the end here. So when McDowell video ended, that was the end of the audio, because there was no audio in the Cowden video, and the Vivint video stopped. So once we heard the audio stop, that's because the McDowell video ended, even though we had visuals from the Cowden video for a few more seconds as he drove by.
And if we could go to the second page of 33A, please.
So again, starting up here, we had different brief recordings of the Vivint video or Vivint video, again at 23:23:14 to 23:23:43. Then it was off for a short period of time, and then another section of video, 23:23:50 to 23:24:19. Then again a break in recording, and this is a time period where there is no video at the scene at all, and no street audio except for some of the dispatch and broadcasting, police broadcast. And then another section from 23:24:34 to 23:25:03. And then a time period where there was no Vivint video, no video at all from the scene until the white video started at 23:32:05 to 23:32:20.
Mr. Fredericks, before you go on, you've reviewed the reports in this case, and was it clear that 23:25 to 23:31, that there was activity occurring in front of the residents?
There was activity. There's both the police reports and the broadcast indicated that.
And in your experience in working with home security cameras, ring bells like that, doorbells like that, is it common to not pick up all of those movements?
Yes. Yeah, they're based on things like motion sensitive events or audio events that trigger a recording. Is also competing with other things that are happening on other cameras that are attached to the system. So it's not uncommon not to have the full record.
And then you were starting at the this white video, I believe?
Yes, and that's at 23:32:05 to 23:32:20. Again, based on the metadata in her video, her recording provided us a time. And then some additional 30-second recordings from the Vivint at 23:41:17, and then another one at 23:42:10. A time period of no recordings, and then another almost 30 seconds, and then 30 seconds of Vivint recording, 23:43:47 to 23:44:16, and then again at 23:44:20 to 23:44:50. And then we had another white video for about 57 seconds, starting around 23:45:02, and it corresponded to visual events we could see, like flashing lights in the Vivint video, 23:45:27 to 23:45:56. So there was some synchronization between what was captured to the white video as what was captured to the Vivint video. And there were additional Vivint clips that after this that I didn't put in the timeline. It was just about the time fire arrived, and it was just flashing lights, and I couldn't really determine what was happening.
You said it was after the time that fire arrived?
Around the time, I think up including that time and after fire arrived.
And then when you reviewed some of those Vivint clips, you reviewed those outside of the sync timeline?
Yes.
And were you able to zoom in at all on the Vivint clips and be able to see in front of or make out anything in front of the patrol vehicle?
No, nothing that I could form any opinion about or really understand because of the multiple flashing lights obstructed anything that was happening there. I couldn't make out individuals, anything like that.
But you went through the steps to see if you could do that.
Yes.
And Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to play 443 and also use the exhibit 18A with the jurors.
I'm sorry, what was the last exhibit you mentioned? 18A, was it?
18A.
Hold on a second. $18A's already, you mean given to the jury?
Yes, well, we play 443.
No. You can play 443 though.
And Mr. Fredericks, the violent videos that you were testifying about that are in the exhibit 33A on the top line, are those associated with already admitted exhibits that you've gone through?
Yes, because 443 is admitted, and so they're all contained there.
Thank you. And if we can publish 443,
Proceed.
play for the jury through, if I can just have one moment. Make sure I get the correct time. You testified that it's a little over 24 minutes, and some of it is after fires arrived, during fires arrived. I'd asked to have you, the jurors will have the entire 24 minutes to take back with them, but I'd asked to have you play it through just 23:34:07.
One moment, please. Just want to. Thank you. I have to change to 443. And at what point would you like to start and finish? Sorry.
Start at the beginning and take us through 23:34:07. The beginning would be 23:21:42.
I'll have to stay up here and then just try to stop it as close to I can at 23:24:07?
23:34.
34. Thank you. Thank you. Your timer?
Proceed.
Thank you.
Just arrest him! Just arrest him! Oh my god, that looks so scary!
Do it again. Hands behind your back. Put your hand behind.
Keep the air open for Henry 77. Henry 217 update when you're available. Alright, traffic, 22176 and Ainsworth, keep the area open, 2323.
Hold on, hold on. Keep off guard.
Conway, very well, 311, same time here, bye. Okay, someone bring some hobbles. Yeah, you got your left. Confirm 8 out of Ainsworth. And Stephenson County is around as well. Unreadable. Incoming 10 slow, 2225. Copy 1 to 10, you still need deeper? No, cancel. Anyone need medical aid there? Yeah, going for a fire. Check them out. Receipt doors open, 13 traffic, 2225. Union 23, put you back on your left. Good copy. 2326. Browser. 2327. Yeah, 92. These are flyers, there's going to be the you have to get right there. Copy the ambulance as well, what was the rest? He's going to have to be tracked down. 2327. There's somebody in the middle of that doggy pile.
Yeah, if you're gonna be careful.
Tracy, do you want on priority?
Yes.
Sounds good, too. Yeah, 92 fires advising they're pulling up on scene.
I've just stopped the video at 23:34:07, having just played it from the beginning.
And the female voice on there that we hear throughout with, at the very end, fire pulling up at the scene, is that from the dispatch files, audio files?
Yes,
Okay, and that's from South Sound 911 for law enforcement?
that's my understanding.
And you included, I'm going to have you go back to, let's see. Approximately 23:23:02. And if you can zoom in on the actual video, play through
23:22.
23:23:02. And I want to have you zoom in when there's a civilian or a person that's present on the.
I'm sorry, I may have misheard you. What was the time you wanted, please?
I'm looking at,
23:23:02, she said.
yeah, 23:23:02. It's right before the video starts. I think it has dispatch still on there.
I see. So this won't have audio until, or won't have video for a couple of seconds.
And I want to go through the video clip that will follow it, and if you can zoom in on that.
Understand. Yeah, I'll play it starting at 23:23:02.
They're open for Henry 77.
And the video starts up at approximately 23:15. And I've zoomed in to an area across the street from where the Vivint doorbell was.
If you could play through that, please.
Henry 217 update when you're available.
Based on the video, when you reviewed it and you zoomed in on that section, are you able to make any determination if there's an individual in that scene?
Yes, in a previous segment, I seen an individual walk out of the house across the street, or from the east side of the house, up the driveway, to a position on the street, and then the video stops, and then when the video picks up there, we see the person still on the street, or on the sidewalk, pardon me. And then in subsequent videos, that individual walks out onto the street and begins directing traffic.
And is that the subsequent video after the 6.5 seconds?
Yes.
If you can play through to the subsequent video, please, and zoom in for the location of the individual.
So this one starts up again at around 23:50. Across the street on the sidewalk.
Alright, traffic, Henry 21796 in Ainsworth, keep the area open, 2323.
And then at 23:24:04, the individual moves out toward the street when there's vehicles coming on.
And can you go forward to the next video, please? And all of this is from Vyman and dispatch.
Correct.
Hey, someone bring some hobbles. Yeah, you got your right.
Are you able to, is that the edge of the frame? There we go.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And you testified previously that the vehicle, the patrol vehicle, second one that we see now, you had previously identified that as Rankin and Ford arriving.
Yes.
Okay. When you watch the video as it plays through, are you able to make any determination if there's backup or other officers arriving from different directions at all with the flashing of the lights?
There are sirens and police vehicles arriving from the west.
Okay. And does that include from the, I guess when you say the west, that would be if you're looking down the street, coming from the opposite direction that the cars are facing?
Yes.
And could you play that through, please?
Stapleton County is around as well.
And based on the reflection that's there, are you able to make any determination if a patrol vehicle or car with lights is coming from Ainsworth into 96?
I haven't looked at it for that question.
Did you review Ms. White's account and statement?
No.
And in reviewing the reports, did you determine approximately the number of officers that responded to the scene?
No.
When you went through Ms. White's video, were there a number of officers that were visible at the scene?
Yes.
Okay. And could you take us through...
What's wrong? What's that? Well, not on that basis, overall.
And if you can bring us through to Ms. White's first video.
It's going to refer to as 33A, Your Honor. That's right.
You can.
Thank you.
Pause there.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to the beginning, sorry. Yes.
And if you could play to the point where the individuals are visible.
Zoom in.
Yes, please. Pause there. Now, based on all the video evidence that you received and reviewed, is this the first video evidence of the officers that responded?
This is the first video that I reviewed, that I received, that provides a clearer picture of the front of the police vehicle and the area where the initial activity was, that shows now, some minutes later, a number of officers around Mr. Ellis on the ground.
And the other videos that you had received, other than the Cowden and McDowell videos, you weren't able to clearly see that area where the officers are gathered?
Wasn't able to make any determination about individuals or movement, no.
And then I wanted to ask you on the individual that came out in the driveway and was directing traffic, you able to make any determination on when that individual goes back down, is done directing traffic and goes back out of scene?
Yes, at about the time that Officer Rankin and Ford arrive.
And could you tell us the exact time, or about the exact time on that, please, based on the videos?
Give me a moment, please. I'm just going to play it for a moment. Just this is the segment, I believe, where police vehicle arrives. Pointing
Stephenson County is around as well.
to the image. Let's go back to it. The image at 23:25:03, where the individual who was directing traffic moves back toward the driveway where we had earlier seen him come out from, and then the recording stops.
I can just have a moment, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, we're about 4 minutes short of our normal breaking time, so it seems like it might be best to break now and instead of in just 4 minutes. So everybody will have to take our morning recess this time. Please do not discuss case among yourselves with anyone else, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you back in about 15 minutes. Talking about?
I believe on Thursday over the lunch hour, or right before the lunch hour, Mr. Conrad sent some exhibits over for audio. And I want to confirm that those are the exhibits that you're referencing now?
Correct.
And you've not added anything or any other exhibits to that? And I know that Mr. Fredericks hasn't gone through all of them as of recently, but he has listened to all of them at some point, so there shouldn't be an issue with authentication because he's authenticated all of them.
Well, I think he wants to ask him about them, and so he needs to have heard them recently. I saw him.
I was going to move to admit them as well if he's able to authenticate them that they came from the.
You're not going to have a problem with moving to the admission of these documents?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You're not going to have any objection to the admission of these documents?
They're not documents, they're audio files.
Audio files?
No, the state does not have an objection, there's just one to confirm that they're the ones that he sent us.
And the other defendants have an objection to them?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Frederick, do you know what we're talking about here?
I believe they're ones I've already listened to, but I don't know specifically which ones.
Okay. Is this cumulative? Are these just sub-pieces of stuff we've already got?
No, Your Honor. They're dispatched records that weren't included within the compilation video.
Okay. And you've heard these?
I might have heard, I'm not sure if I've heard all of them.
Well, it doesn't sound like the state has an objection to the admissibility of them.
I guess not. I guess we'll see. State's heard them all.
Your Honor, they've been provided, that was a long time ago, so if he wants to ask specific questions about the content, then I'd ask if they get published here, then if it's a question of authentication. It's our understanding based on the files that were provided to Mr. Fredericks.
All right. Well, I assume Mr. Conrad's going to want to publish whatever it is, at least at some point. Okay. I guess we'll see. Let's have the jury.
Got me up here.
I guess it depends. Ms. Fricky, are you the one starting? Do you want him at the
Yeah,
laptop?
he's gonna, well, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Since we've got a short afternoon, anybody have a problem if we try to get started at 1:15, if my meeting's over by then? Does that work? Does that work for the state too?
No problem.
Okay, let's try to do that. Let's try to do that. Not sure when my meeting will be over, but looking at the agenda, I would think we'd be done by then. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, Mr. Fricke?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Fredericks.
Morning, Mr. Fricke.
I just have a few questions, actually, but we'll start where you ended up with the prosecutor on this. This is Exhibit 443. And if you could pull that up again, and I'd ask you specifically if you can go to, I think it was approximately 232503.
Give me a moment, please. I'll do something that will help me get there quicker.
Okay. And specifically what I'm asking about is and you can zoom in on it once you get there as well. I think you indicated on direct that was the time frame where you indicated that Mr. Hayes was visible. Chad Hayes, well, a person was visible, but
Yes.
that's Chad Hayes.
Thank you. Okay. I can get there quicker. Now, the time you wanted was,
I believe it's 232503, approximately. Well, I certainly could have 2325.
2325, yeah, okay.
I believe. You can
Yeah.
certainly feel free to zoom in on it.
okay, thank you. This is 232508. There's no,
03, I believe. If you believe it's 08, then.
no, I'm just saying, pardon me, that I don't think there's any, there's no video at 232503.
Okay, then go up a few frames or seconds to 232315.
232315, so back 2 minutes?
Yes, I probably,
Okay. I'm at 232316 right now.
can you see Mr. Hayes yet in that video?
I believe so. One moment, please.
And again, I guess. Prior to that time coming out of the house.
Yes.
At what time do you see him coming out of the house?
Give me a moment.
Sure.
Thank you. He appears from the east side of the premise, from behind what looks like a tree, at approximately 23:22:31.
Okay, and again, can you zoom in on that where you're indicating he's there
Yes.
by the garbage cans there, of which would appear to, from my vision, appear to be garbage cans?
Yes, and we can only tell because when we play the video, then we can see him in motion.
Right. So that's the first time he's visible in the videos, is that fair to say?
A few seconds before that, but yes, this is the first time.
And so, and then getting back to my original questions, you actually don't see him leaving the house from any area of the house, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. He comes from the back area here that is highly compressed,
Right.
so we can't see much.
So whether he's standing there watching for a period of time, whether it's seconds or a couple minutes, we have no idea. Would you agree with that?
Let me just look at it again.
Sure.
I'm going backwards. I don't think that I would be able to tell you when he is
Outside of the residence.
outside of the residence, but he does come from. Looks like there's a fence area back behind that area. We can see some pixel changes, and then we can see his body kind of form.
As you indicated a moment ago.
Yes,
And that was at, I think you said, at what time frame?
that he first appears.
Yeah, where you can identify him.
Sorry, traffic 7317 on control line.
Going to Jesse's because you really just did that.
I think the first indication that he appears kind of at the area of the fence is, we can see the hard area of the fence here, and then we can see a body movement from behind the fence at, oops, I'm sorry, 23:22:24. And there's a dark area that indicates a break in the fence structure, and then he appears from that dark area, walks away from that dark area, and then appears on the roadway.
And that appeared to be from the audio there, a moment or at the same time approximately when you heard, what I heard as "try again."
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Fredericks isn't here to testify regarding the audio.
Well,
Put the two together.
I don't have an opinion on what the audio says, but I can play it, and you can listen to it again.
and that's at, where you hear that, that's at 23:22:22, or, excuse me, 23:22:28.
Yes.
5, 6, 7. And you said the person that I've identified as Mr. Hayes, he appears, for the first time you can identify him at 23.
The first time the video picks him up is 23:22:24.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you can go, I'll leave this exhibit, but exhibit number 441, which is pretty close to the beginning of your direct, and specifically if you can go to approximately, I say slide 50.
Yes.
Okay, and that's, as you indicated before, the first officer visible on the left, you believe that to be Collins, is that correct?
Yes.
And then the second officer, who is then in the middle between, at least from my visualization, between Collins and Mr. Ellis, you have identified as Mr. Burbank.
I agree with that, yes.
Okay. And then if you can go to, obviously, this is from the McDowell video,
Correct.
and this is pretty close to the very beginning of that video, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We don't see what direction they obviously came from. We know at this point Mr. Ellis is on the ground at this frame here.
Well, we do know we have 50 images that kind of tell us how they came to this position.
Right, but I understand, but we don't, at this point, we didn't see how the officers got out of the vehicle, for instance.
Correct.
We don't see how Collins, who was coming from the passenger side, how he got to that area.
Correct.
Or how Burbank, who's now in front of Collins, at least for a moment, how he got to that area.
At this image?
Your Honor, I'd ask for clarification. I think defense counsel identified Collins as a passenger.
No, I did not.
Just one question before, and I apologize if I misheard it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So how Collins came from the passenger area, is what I said.
Passenger side.
Other side, okay. And we don't know how he got to the passenger side of that vehicle.
Well, to be clear, my evidence initially was that he was not at the passenger side, he was in front of the vehicle, police vehicle.
Well, let's back it off to the very beginning of this video here.
So the police vehicle, the tires are behind the white line,
I understand.
and he moves from the position that is forward of the police vehicle.
Okay, but he's in the motion of walking, it looks like away from McDowell at that moment. Would you agree?
Yes, he's moving away from the McDowell camera, yes.
Okay. So where he's coming from, at least from this, that's the earliest video of Mr. Collins, is it fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay. As well as Mr. Burbank, for that matter.
That is correct.
Okay. And so as you go along here, and if you go up to frame 50,
Sorry. Yes.
and this is all, how many seconds are within that from the beginning to frame 50?
Just under 2 seconds.
Okay. So very fast, and then you had indicated, I believe, at frame 72, now, go back to that moment there.
72?
Go back, okay, right now Burbank's out of the picture, as you indicated, although you might be able to see the shadow of his foot.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
If you go forward or backward a little bit. Right there. Now, you can see that's Burbank with the yellow arrow there, correct?
Yes.
And Ellis, of course, is on the ground at that point, Mr. Ellis is. And play it. Are you saying he doesn't push with his feet on Mr. Burbank?
What I'm saying is that the video provides us only that two-dimensional view.
Right.
So we can't see from the video whether or not there's contact. What we can look at and observe is that his legs turn, they're bent at the knee, they don't extend.
Okay.
And in fact, his foot takes a static position, doesn't move, as Mr. Burbank is moving backward. So the video can't be used to say there is contact, but we can evaluate the position of his legs, the fact they don't extend, and that his foot remains at a static position as Mr. Burbank is still moving past the foot.
Well, let's go back. So you were saying there's no extension here, is your testimony at this moment?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back a frame. And go back 2 frames. Is there extension there?
No.
Let's go back 5 frames. Extension there?
No, it's not moving.
Okay, it's not moving?
No.
Okay, let's go back from the very beginning. Can you play it in slow is this slow motion? Can you play it in a little faster motion, but not normal speed?
Backwards or forwards?
Forward. Well, back up, and then we'll play it forward. Okay, you start right there.
So
Now, Burbank's crouched over there. Is that fair to say?
at slide 12, he has his right arm around Mr. Ellis's upper thigh area.
Does he appear to be crouched over
Uh,
as he has his arm around his upper thigh?
He's bent over, yes.
Okay. And
I don't know about crouch. Crouch would be,
bent over. That's
yeah, bent over would
better
be.
characterization. I'll
Okay.
give you that. Okay. And then you play it. And he goes out, and you're saying that's all voluntary. That's the way you look at it.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
That's not my
My
opinion.
characterization. Okay.
Yes, we're just talking about the limitations of the video.
All right.
So I'll reiterate because I want to clarify. The video doesn't show whether or not there's contact. So we can't know whether there was contact with his foot. All we can do is evaluate the independent movement of Mr. Ellis's leg and Mr. Burbank's motion, and the fact that they're not moving in unison together. And Mr. Ellis's legs do not extend. His feet are elevated and not moving. There's no motion blur. There's no movement between the pixels of his foot. And Mr. Burbank is moving away. So there's no suggestion in the video that there is contact, but we can't know for sure whether or not there's contact.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank you.
Now, you know, I spoke briefly the other day, and actually a couple weeks ago when you were here last. The video that you put together again, and which is illustrated in Exhibit 33A, is that beginning of the Vivint video is what you put in there as the beginning of the Vivint for purposes of this illustration. Fair to say?
It was the beginning of the events that were captured to the Vivint video. So the Vivint video had been recording, I understand, for months.
Right.
But this was,
Sure, we're not going back months.
yes.
But as indicated before, the actually first clip you received, well, you received all the clips.
No, well, I received all the clips of the event.
Okay.
So these were consecutive clips
Right.
of the event. And then I received one clip that occurred 25 minutes before any activity.
Ballpark.
And then some clips that were long after the events I was asked to examine.
Fair enough. And so I'm going to focus on that first clip again that we talked before. You had received that individually as well as in a merged with all the other clips. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you've seen that merged Vivint clips, correct?
Yes.
And I'd ask, and you have that on your computer as well. It's actually a laptop, identified as Exhibit 2707.
I have it.
Right.
I've looked at it. It was not authentic, so I didn't rely on it.
Right. When you say it's not authentic, what do you mean?
It means that it eliminated all the, first of all, there was no metadata. There was no time associated with the individual clips, and there was no breaks between the clips. It gave the illusion that it's one continuous event, which it wasn't.
We know it wasn't because you got the timestamps and you know there's gaps in there.
Correct. So it wasn't, one couldn't watch it and understand the relationship between timing and events, so it wasn't reliable for any of the work that I was asked to do.
For what you were asked to do. But it does show the absence, I would say, of the vehicles, and I'm talking about the police cruiser as well as the McDowell vehicle and Lowry as well, driving to the scene.
Can you rephrase that? I don't understand.
What it does show, basically, is what it doesn't show, is how the vehicles, both the police cruiser and the McDowell and Lowry vehicles behind the police cruiser arriving at the scene.
Well, it's identical to 443 in that regard, in that it contains, 443 contains those clips from the events, plus all the identification of all the non-recorded time periods, but they're identical content.
Right. Well, I understand that, but let me back up. So the Vivint video begins, I believe you said, at 23:21:41.
Yes, about that.
All right? And that's in that Exhibit 33A, right in front of you.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. At 23:21:40, a second before that, That's the end of that first clip that we have that's not included in this.
No,
Okay, well, let me,
not at all. It's
No, no.
completely wrong.
right. Well, no, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
There is no Vivint clip that includes 23, 21, 40.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
my fault.
yeah.
And so when they got to you merged and you looked at them, which is through 2707, all it shows, you're at 23, 21, 40, nothing's there as far as relevant to this scene, correct? Well,
Which video are you
okay.
referring to?
We're going to Vivint. It doesn't show a 23, 20, 21, 40.
The Vivint video did not record at
Right.
that time, correct?
Starts at 41.
Yes.
And at 41, the cars appear.
Well, at 41, when the video starts the recording, the scene is already unfolded, yes.
And you can, and when you see, if you play the merged videos, the merged Vivint videos, understanding that there's a gap in there between the very first Vivint and the beginning of 23, 21, 41, all we know is those cars suddenly appear.
That's why it's not authentic
Right.
and would be misleading, because vehicles don't suddenly appear,
They don't.
and it gives us no reference for how long it was between the end of that first clip, 25 minutes earlier, that we only discovered after doing the authentication,
Understood.
and this actual starting point.
So whether the cars appeared again at 23, 20, 20, 41 a minute earlier, you can't tell.
No, cannot
Or
tell.
19, 20.
That's correct.
Whatever the time is.
Yes.
We do know they didn't appear within that 29 seconds of the first Vivint clip, which was right around, I think you said 10:57 the other day.
I'm sorry, what,
We
can
do
you?
know they did not appear at, I think the original Vivint video clip that we do have, that you have seen, and I think you had the time at approximately 10:57, 3 minutes before 11. That's ballpark.
And I'm not following your question, I'm sorry.
I haven't got the question yet.
Okay.
So in that clip, that very first clip that's not part of your exhibit here, we know that the police car, along with the McDowell and Lowry vehicle, are not in that clip.
That's correct.
So we know they didn't appear during that I think it's 29-second clip.
Yes, during that 29-second clip, 25 minutes earlier,
Right,
they are not there.
correct.
That's right.
So when they appeared between that clip and 23, 21, 41, we simply don't know based on the videos.
No, but we have a record of the previous traffic stop a mile and a half away that,
You have that.
that would narrow the time period.
That would narrow the time, but
Yes.
still, when they arrived here, we don't know.
The exact time that everything started, we can't tell from the video.
All right. So, and certainly in this video clip, well, all the videos that you put together, including 443 and 441, we do not see the beginning of the interaction between Mr. Ellis and the two officers, Collins and Burbank,
We have no visual records of the initial contact
and no audio record.
and no audio records, yes.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Osser?
Excuse me, good morning.
Sorry, I'm sneaking up on this. Kind of work backwards from where Ms. Nicolava went last week, all the way up through today, okay? You started with exhibit 545, I think. Can you pull that up for us?
Yes.
And so
I'm sorry. I'm at
Okay.
I'm sorry.
545, because that's the one where you had the perspectives of the camera views from McDowell and Cowden. You remember that? Yeah. Would have been page 9 of 12.
I'm sorry. What would assist me is if you could tell me the exhibit number and whether it's a PDF or a video.
So this is not a video.
This is a PDF.
Correct.
Right. So I just
545.
have to go to a different spot
Sorry.
to find the PDFs. Thank you. I apologize. Yes, thank you.
All right, and I think it was page 9 of the exhibit that illustrated the view. There we go, perfect. All right, and so as we're looking at the exhibit, Mr. Fredericks, it looks like blue to me, but blue or purple, kind of cone shape. That's the perspective of the visibility of Mr. Cowden from that perspective, from his phone, from that perspective. Is that right?
From his phone.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so this is the most common field of view that phone demonstrated because the phone is moving around, but it captures that approximate area.
Okay. And you would agree that that area that's captured on at least the view from his phone as he stopped at at Ainsworth going on to 96 would not include the passenger side of the patrol vehicle?
Correct.
Okay. And if I understand, McDowell's point of view is either the red or pink kind of overlapping the other direction going west on 96.
Yeah, and I apologize. Let me go back to that previous question, the passenger side, because the passenger side is what do you? So, just to be clear, the camera is positioned approximately in this position. I'm pointing to around the stop line.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and he's looking. The camera is looking northeast. The orientation of the police vehicle, the tires are behind the stop line on 96th, facing westbound.
Okay. And just
Okay.
so the record's clear, you're using your cursor to demonstrate for the jury where approximately the tires of the vehicle would be?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, from that perspective, then the hood of the police vehicle would be visible
Okay.
from this perspective, and we see that when the camera pans at one point, and portion of the passenger side, depending on what you're looking at, would be visible
Understood.
from that position.
All right.
So I wanted to clarify that. You certainly don't see the ground on the other side of the passenger side of the car.
Okay. All right. I think we're on the same page.
Great, thank you.
All right. And so then the red, is it a sphere cone? I don't know what you call that. Red or pink?
Highlight.
Is the perspective that you estimated based on the location of the McDowell first video, Exhibit 20, is that right?
Yes, based on the perspective from the home security camera that shows the position of her car in relation to the driveway
Yes, sir.
here, that the back of her vehicle is approximately in line with the driveway, and so the camera perspective would be about, under a vehicle length in front of it.
All right. And just so the record's clear, you were using your cursor to show or illustrate to the jury where you took that perspective from.
That's correct.
Okay. What this doesn't show is that the perspective of Miss McDowell's video and or sight would have been obstructed by the patrol vehicle that would have been directly in front of it, right?
Well, she can't see the front of the patrol vehicle.
Right. She can't see through the vehicle, right?
Correct.
And her camera can't see through the vehicle.
That's correct.
And so what's happening in front of the vehicle would have been obstructed from her view entirely.
If she remained, during the time of the recording, there is a time when she exits the vehicle with her body.
Okay.
But from this perspective, and from the camera's perspective, it can't see the other side.
Right. We can see, it says McDowell video right underneath it there,
Yes.
that from almost center of her car to the left as we're looking at is obstructed by the patrol vehicle. Is that fair?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. If we're looking at her video,
Mhm.
about center of her dashboard to the left is obstructed by the patrol vehicle. Do you see that?
I think the center of her vehicle would be on the frame right, extreme corner. So I don't know if I would fully agree, depending on what your point is.
I understand. I'm just saying, you can see in the video itself, she can't see anything that's happening in front of the police vehicle. Is that right?
Objection,
Yeah.
Your Honor, this is from the camera perspective.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Certainly the camera perspective can't see in front of the vehicle, right?
Yes, the camera perspective from here cannot see through the
And
vehicle.
if Ms. Dow's holding the camera, she certainly can't see through the vehicle either.
Well, again, we have video from the Vivint camera, and I'm trying to be very specific here with your answers. From the Vivint camera, we see the video still facing forward while she has her head out, and the camera is inside the car. So Still, she's going to be limited on what she could possibly see, whether she's in the car or she's sticking her head outside the car. There's
Understood.
still a limitation.
So you would agree that the limitation would be based on where she is relative to that patrol vehicle, because she can't see through a car, right?
Correct?
Okay. If you could go to, now 440 is I think that's the PDFs you took of the 6 seconds from Exhibit 20. Do I have that right?
One second, I'll take a look.
I just want to orient the jury to what I'm going to ask about here.
And I'm just asking to not be published, so I pull up the right one
fine.
for a moment. So 440 is a video.
Okay, so then let's use that.
Okay.
440 is,
Give me a second,
yeah, yes, sir.
please. Thanks. Yes, I have that.
So just to orient the jury, 440 is I wrote down 6-second clip. Maybe it's less than that.
I think it's roughly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was taken from Exhibit 20, which is the first McDowell video, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then I think 441 was the PDFs of this that you broke down. Do I have that correct?
I think so.
Okay. Well, so this is the actual video before you made the PDFs, right?
This is the cropped, magnified, and stabilized.
Okay, perfect. I wanted you to play it and then go back and ask you a couple questions about it, okay?
Yes. Oh, I got audio. 1 second.
I don't care if there's audio or not. It doesn't make a difference to me.
Okay.
This is this examination.
Okay. Then there won't be any audio.
All right. Go back to the beginning. Did you watch that, Mr. Fredericks?
I did.
And you can see in... I'll let you get there.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. All right. In the center of... Right there. No, go back. That's the plastic grocery bag that you spoke about last week, right?
I believe that's what it is.
And that's going to blow across to the edge of over to the right of the videos we're looking at it towards the curve, right?
Yes.
And go up above that. What's that item right there?
It's a water bottle.
That's that big water jug that was purchased with the EBT card 15 minutes earlier, right?
I don't know. It's a water bottle that's there on the ground.
All right. And you know, because you've seen the scene photos, right underneath the passenger door, obstructed in this video, is that box of donuts, right?
Yes.
Okay. How'd those get there?
How did the box of donuts get there?
Or the water bottle or the bag that's blowing down the street?
That's outside of what I was asked to examine, and I wouldn't know in any event.
Well, we certainly know, based on the video that we've seen, none of those items are in Mr. Ellis's possession at any point that was captured on video, right?
That's correct.
But we know those were in his possession at least when he left the 7-Eleven at some point earlier in the day, right?
It's my understanding that he purchased, according to the exhibit we looked at, that he purchased some items, and I believe there were a box of donuts, a water bottle. I can't remember if there was anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Consistent with the items we know are on scene.
Yes.
But we never see how they get out of Mr. Ellis's possession from any witness that report that you've seen or any video that you've been provided, right?
Objection. It's a formal question.
Yeah. Let's deal with one at a time.
Good point. Let's start with, you've reviewed all of the statements made, correct?
Yes.
Neither McDowell or Cowden or any other witness sees Mr. Ellis with anything in his hands at any point during their observations. Isn't that right?
I don't recall what the witnesses said about that.
Okay. Certainly none of the video shows any of those items in Mr. Ellis's possession at any point in time, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But we know they're there because we have the scene photos in there contained in the video, right?
Yes.
Just don't know when they got there or how they got there.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it right here for now. This is, remind me, this is 440 still? 440.
The video.
Video.
Yeah.
In the video, is this the first portion of the video, or did we move into, when I say the video, Exhibit 20 is the full video that McDowell reported, right?
Yes, this is the beginning of that video.
The very beginning?
Yes.
Okay. So the very beginning of the McDowell video shows Officer Collins between Miss McDowell's perspective, between her and both Mr. Ellis and Officer Burbank, is that right?
Correct.
I understand it's two-dimensional, so we can't tell how far, if I understood a couple.
Exactly. Thank
Okay.
you.
But we do know, we can tell that Officer Collins is obstructing the view of those two individuals, meaning he's closer to Ms. McDowell. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. And we don't know where he's coming from before this frame, he being Officer Collins, is that right?
Correct.
It looks as though he's walking towards Mr. Ellis and Officer Burbank when the video begins, is that right?
I prefer to say he's moving toward, and then
Okay.
we can look at the video and decide whether he's walking or running or moving quickly.
Doesn't matter,
Yeah.
just he's, the directionality, he's going that direction.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Okay. Oh, see, now I'm gonna have to go back to the PDF. Sorry, can you go to the PDF
Sure.
441 now?
Mhm. One second.
Of course.
441.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, so this is the 175 still PDFs of the 6 seconds that we saw. Is that fair?
174.
174 of the 6 seconds.
Yes.
So you're taking a PDF, what, 30 PDFs per second?
Roughly.
Okay. So what's that breakdown into actual time? Do we know that?
Yes. 6 seconds.
Okay, all right. Okay, now, this morning, actually last week, I objected because I thought I heard you say that Mr. Ellis's leg was between Officer Collins. Do you remember me doing that last week?
I remember you saying that.
Right. And in between, I meant between relative front to back as opposed to in between his legs. Does that make sense?
Well, I think your objection was that you thought that I misspoke and identified the wrong officer.
Okay, fair enough. When we went through this slide by slide, why don't you start going through and I'll tell you when to stop. You at one point had Officer Burbank's left arm around the leg of Mr. Ellis. Get to
Yes.
that point, please. Right there. Okay. And if I understood your testimony this morning and some on Thursday, we can't really tell if Mr. Ellis is off the ground at this point, but because of placement of his other foot, we know his other foot's on the ground. Is that right?
Well, slide 13.
Yeah.
Let me just go back and then we'll go forward from here.
Of course.
So at slide 11,
Yes, sir.
both of his feet are off the ground.
Okay.
Both of Mr. Ellis's feet are off the ground. And we see Officer Burbank with his left arm around under the thigh area of Mr. Ellis as his foot is up in the air. So we've got 2 feet, so he's off the ground at this point. And I believe I testified it was about a half second or something.
Sure. So what we're seeing here is Officer Burbank's left leg between Mr. Ellis's legs. Would you agree with that?
I would, give me a second to,
Go ahead.
yes, I would agree
Right.
with that, yep.
And you agree that Officer Burbank has Mr. Ellis's right leg up in his left arm, right?
Yes,
And then he appears to sweep the other leg with his left leg in an effort to bring Mr. Ellis to the ground, right? Right there.
I wouldn't have any opinion as to whether he's trying to sweep. I don't say that's not true or that's not happening. I just don't have any opinion.
Okay.
I can't tell from the video.
All right. But the actions are consistent with what I've just described, is that right?
Well, again, you've described the other part accurately. I believe that he is pulling up on his leg, or on, yes, Officer Burbank is pulling up on his leg. I can't say what's happening. You described a sweeping movement. I don't quite see that.
Okay. But it appears to be an effort to take Mr. Ellis to the ground. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
And go ahead and go forward, and I'll tell you when to stop. Stop right there, please. All right, now the yellow arrow is still Officer Burbank, correct?
Yes.
And so he's situated towards Mr. Ellis's feet at this point. Would you agree with that?
In an XY coordinate, they appear to be in the same two-dimensional position,
Okay.
yes.
And so he was able to get Mr. Ellis to the ground regardless of what his intent, not commenting on the intent. He got Mr. Ellis to the ground at this point, right?
Yes,
I'm sorry, Mr. Officer, can you have the frame of the
What frame number is it?
46.
Thank you. All right. And Officer Burbank is standing, right? He's not on the ground.
Correct,
He's on both feet, right?
yes.
Above Mr. Ellis.
I would say very close to Mr. Ellis, yes. And above is fine. I mean, it looks like he's standing erect, or he will be standing erect in a moment.
Okay. And Officer Collins, it looks to be behind Officer Burbank. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go through it again, and I'll tell you when to stop. All right, stop right there. At that point, if I understood this morning, you are unable to tell if Mr. Ellis is forcing or kicking Officer Burbank towards the center of the street. Is that right? You wouldn't give that opinion based on what we have.
Well, what I'm saying is that video does not show contact, and Mr. Ellis's feet are not extended and moving toward Officer Burbank. And in fact, his feet are stationary as Mr. Burbank is moving backwards, so they're not moving together. So what I would say from this is the video doesn't support that there's contact.
Okay. Well, if there was no contact, there would be nothing to prevent Officer Burbank from getting on top of Mr. Ellis. You agree?
Well, I don't know what he wants to do. So if he wanted to get on top, I don't.
Well, we know he wanted to get him to the ground, right?
We know he did get him to the ground.
And they were trying to restrain him, right?
They were doing that, yes.
And if Mr. Ellis is not resisting and kicking him away, there would be nothing to prevent Officer Burbank from getting on top of him, would there?
Again, you're asking me. You're saying that they wanted to do this. They've tried to do this. They wanted to do this. I can't say what their tactics were. I can only talk about what the video is showing.
I'll rephrase it. Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the video that would have prevented Officer Burbank from getting on top of Mr. Ellis at this point in time, is there?
That's a really difficult question. Not being there, not knowing the circumstance, not seeing how close they are together. I don't think I could fairly answer that question.
Understood.
From the video.
Go ahead and move forward to the point where Officer Collins then gets on top of Mr. Ellis, please. Right there, pause it.
Yeah, sorry, go back.
That's okay.
So, roughly 86?
That's fine,
Okay.
86. You would agree that Mr. Ellis is on his back at this point?
Yes.
And Officer Collins is engaged with, I'll say, the front of Mr. Ellis. We don't know exactly where, XY coordinate, right?
Yes.
And I can see at least, it looks like Mr. Ellis's right foot is in the air, is that right?
Yes.
And his left foot is down on the pavement. Oh, now switch.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to orient you're asking a question. I believe it's his right foot.
And we'll see it go up and down as we move forward, right? So you would agree that Mr. Ellis is, during this portion of the video, is on his back the entire rest of the video?
Well, let me stop you. You said his feet goes up and down right, and then you went, was that a question?
Oh, no, I meant his right foot.
Goes up and down?
I'll rephrase. Let me ask.
Okay.
The entire rest of this video, Mr. Ellis is on his back. You'd agree?
Yes.
And we'll see either his right foot or left foot going up and down in the video.
Well, let's look at it and count it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So his right foot, visible at slide 77, is off the ground to some degree. And it goes in the air, so it's one time up in the air.
Yes, sir.
It goes down as his left foot comes up,
Yes, sir.
and it stays down. And then at slide 115, it comes up again, I would say knee height off the ground. And then I think it's his left foot. So that's, so down, or up, down, and back to that position.
Okay. That wasn't really my point, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
He's on his back the entire time, right?
Yes.
And Officer Collins, who's 230 pounds, is mounting him and delivering elbow strikes to his face, right?
I can't, I know my testimony was his arm was, and hand was going down toward Mr. Ellis's head area. I can't see where the strikes, what part of his body struck, or if he struck him.
Fair enough, but you've read his statement, right?
Yes, some time ago.
Where Officer Collins describes exactly this. I got on top of him and delivered 4 or 5 elbow strikes to his face, right?
I have a vague recollection. I don't remember how many he said.
We'll come back. Don't worry.
Okay, thanks.
But we can agree that in the entirety of this frame of the video, on McDowell's first video, Mr. Ellis is on his back, appearing to be struck by Officer Collins multiple times.
Yes, that's, the video shows that.
Okay. Go to her second video, 21. Or actually go to Cowden's video, I think it's 19.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's the right one. Yes. All right. When was this taken relative to what we just watched, time-wise? You created a synced timeline. How much time has passed from what we just saw to when Mr. Cowden started recording?
Yeah, refer to 33A.
Sure.
Thank you. Roughly 10 seconds?
So can you tell us how in 10 seconds Mr. Ellis got off his back such that he's avoided the 230-pound grappler that's delivering elbows to his forehead?
I don't follow your question.
Well, can you play it for us?
Yes.
Stop it. Okay. Mr. Ellis is in front of Officer Collins, right?
Yes.
And Officer Collins is now behind with his arms around the chest and under Mr. Ellis's left arm, correct?
Yes.
So in 10 seconds, how did Mr. Ellis get the 230-pound grappler who was delivering elbow strikes on his back get to this position?
Check your honor, false or speculation.
I would sustain that unless there's something in the video that tells you.
I would have to take a look at the, is it 441, the full exhibit for a moment, just to refresh my memory?
If that helps, go ahead. That's the PDF, though, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm switching.
Is it 554 is the timeline?
443.
443, thanks. Just stop publishing for a moment. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know when you've had a chance to look at it.
Thank you. Just gonna turn off the audio so we don't hear it. I've reviewed it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't answer it. There's the McDowell view moves away for those 10 seconds by when And then when the Cowden video starts up, they're in that position, so I can't answer that.
Okay, so just so we all understand what has been captured, the end of what I had you show with Mr. Collins delivering the appear to be elbows, is the last.
I know, I don't agree with that. Just a downward
The strikes.
motion, yes.
There's no video showing the interaction between Mr. Ellis and Mr. Collins until the Cowden video that we see.
That's right,
All right, and that's about 10 seconds.
yes.
All right, so we have no information about how Mr. Ellis got out from underneath Officer Collins, who's on top of him, right?
Okay. Your question is assuming that Mr. Ellis did that. I don't know whether he got out from under or was moved to that position.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to be careful how I answer your question.
How about this? We have no information to account for how they ended up in the position that we see in Mr. Cowden's video.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. If you could go to Exhibit 21, which is the second McDowell video. And we can publish, I don't know who's got control of it, we can publish this, but it's been admitted.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I have the right one up. Yeah.
So just so we're oriented, this is the second McDowell video, right?
That's right.
All right, go ahead and hit play, and I'll have you pause it, because this morning you talked about seeing one of the officer's hands directly on top of Mr. Ellis's hands. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So go to that location, please. That was fast. And actually, if you could back it up a little bit and sorry, back it up meaning in time. There you go. Keep going, keep going. Let's start it like right here, okay? Can you give us the time just so the record's clear?
This is just 5 or 6 seconds into the video.
Okay. All right, so, Mr. Fredericks, I want you to listen. Does this have sound too?
Yes.
Okay. Listen and watch the placement of the hands, and I'll ask you some questions, okay?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm just.
Behind your back. You're gonna get it again. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Right back there. If you could rewind it just a little bit so we can see more of the officers and Mr. Ellis, please. Perfect, right there. All right. You read my mind, thank you.
Yeah.
So we can see Mr. Ellis's hand, correct?
Yes.
And that's his right hand, is it not?
I am not certain which hand it is. I tried to answer that question.
Okay.
It might be, but I can't.
Well, we know Mr. Ellis is looking to the left as we're looking at this. Is that right?
Yeah, let me help.
You see his face.
Yeah, but shortly before this, we saw Mr. Ellis's torso come up, put his hand behind his back. Mr. Burbank took a hold of his right hand, and that's when we talked about where he came off of Mr. Ellis's back, still holding on to his hand, and this is shortly after that, so very likely it's his right hand.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second, but
Yes.
so
So I agree that it's likely his right hand.
right, meaning Mr. Ellis is got his right hand on the cement, and his face is looking to the left as we're looking at this perspective. Would you agree with that? You can rewind it if it helps you orient, because you can see his face.
Yeah, it's challenging, but I believe that his face is looking upward
Yes.
here. This would be the back of his head, and very likely his nose, a feature that's highlighted by the available light.
Okay.
Likely could be his nose, could be his ear, but it's likely his nose. And that is Officer Burbank's hand.
Okay. And can you tell us which officer is to the right of the foot? If you just pause right there.
Yes, thank you.
Who's officer on the right and who's on the left?
Okay, this would be Burbank with the taser,
Yes, sir.
and Officer Collins.
Okay. And so you'd agree that Officer Collins is situated on the back of Mr. Ellis as he's kind of sideways there. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Well, Officer Collins' leg is on the ground, knee is on the ground. His left thigh is close to Mr. Ellis's head.
Okay. as Mr. Ellis is kind of facing this way, so he's kind of sideways. Would you agree with that?
Who's sideways, Mr. Ellis?
Yeah.
On his left side?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's my point. He's not on his stomach, right?
Yes,
He's on his side.
I would say so.
Okay.
Yes.
And Officer Burbank is attempting to get his right hand back behind Mr. Ellis's back in this still frame. Would you agree with that?
No. I have to be careful about what the video, both video and audio show us. We hear one of the officers talk about getting control of put your hand behind your back. And as that's being done, we see Officer Collins with his left hand on Mr. Ellis's probably right hand, as it has been for several of the videos as we approach this time period. But you're asking me to agree that that their intent was to move the hand. We hear them say, "Put your hand behind your back,"
Let's just
but the
rewind.
hand doesn't move.
Okay. Let's just. Okay.
Recess. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss case among yourselves with anyone else, and do not permit anyone to discuss case with you or in your presence. Please be back up by 1:15. Thank you.
Thank you.